Well, first, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This piece has been desperately needed. It really does make such a huge difference to have that kind of energy at the door, to have that kind of welcoming space being made as people walk through the door. So I'm just very, very grateful for everyone who is volunteering to be of service in this way. I don't know if you can remember the first time you walked in the door. For some of us, it was a very long time ago. For some of us, it isn't, but it's a really intimidating thing. It's anxiety provoking because people come and they are in search of something, and they're hoping that this, especially if they actually show up in person as opposed to watching online, which a lot of people do before they come in person. But if they're coming in person, they really are sort of hoping that this will be a place that really feels aligned. And so I think it's so important that right from the get-go, we are communicating our mission and our core values to people, and not because we read it in service, but we're communicating our mission and our core values by how we actually are engaging with people, that we're inclusive, that we're open, that we're paying attention, we're trying to make space for people before they actually walk through the door. And I think that is just so important. People are so incredibly busy and hungry for spiritual community. And so having a welcome team that is specifically anchoring being a living expression of how our community understands itself to be, there's no greater gift, because either people are going to be like, oh, wow, this is awesome, which is great because then they're a match with our community, or they're going to be like, wow, this is not what I'm looking for. And that's okay too. But that will help them be able to discern where it is that they actually would like to be. So that being said, it doesn't all have to be extroverted energy. I want to be really clear. We get a lot
Mhm.
of introverts that show up, and especially when people are just sort of testing the waters and trying to figure things out, the last thing they want is a hard sell, right? And we don't need to hard sell our community. Let me say that from the get-go. We don't need to do some sort of a hard sell. We're amazing. And so we just need to show up the way we would show up, which is to just make somebody feel welcome. The big things that somebody new to a space, they don't know the timing of things. They may think they know the timing of things, but they don't necessarily know the timing of things. So helping to orient them, like, service is going to start in about 5 minutes. If you'd like to use the bathrooms, pointing them to where the bathrooms are. We have a beautiful courtyard, and hospitality will be in the courtyard afterwards. So, please make sure you take a moment, like, uh, orienting them in time and in space, and doing that in a way that doesn't require much of anything from them except to say thank you, right?
Mhm.
So that, they say one of the number one turnoff questions when new people come is, how did you hear about us? Um, because it puts people on the defensive, right? If
Yeah.
they offer that information, that's great. I mean, I sometimes get things from people, they're like, I looked you up and I found you. And they want to
Mhm.
share how they
Sure.
found us.
Sure.
So, I think questions like, welcome, is this your first time here? That's fine. But then, so let me help you get a little oriented, because that's the piece that people really need, right? Service will be about an hour and 15 minutes or so, unless our minister decides she has a lot more to say.
Mhm.
Just giving people a sense of sort of what to expect. And the big one too is really letting, there's a sign up sheet in the lobby now that says, like, children, youth, and getting people, the youth, into the youth and family piece. And so walking people over, like actually walking them all the way there, introducing them to Lissa, and then like really doing a handoff. So the person's not
Mhm.
left sort of like wandering around. I saw people
Right.
doing that. I mean, I'm talking about the things I was seeing people do. I'm just saying, yes, like more of that. Um,
Right.
I also think talking to people, just touching base with people when they're inside. Sometimes people come in through the side doors. Somebody could have some of the bulletins and could just be walking around and make sure that everybody has one, and just saying good morning. Sometimes it's as simple as good morning. We're really glad you're here today. And that's enough to make somebody feel like they were seen. Right? Especially when you have the buttons that say, ask me anything. And you can even say that, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to tap one of us with the button, or anyone in the community for that matter. Right.
Sure.
The idea is to just create a space where people feel like they can relax, right? That they don't have to be like, well, what's next and what's happening? And, oh God, I have to go to the bathroom, but I don't know where that's going to be. And I have to ask somebody now, and that's just super awkward to have to ask where the bathroom is. Right? So
Sure.
giving people that kind of information up front just helps them to geographically locate themselves in the space. Making sure people know that I'm always available to talk to them after service if they have any questions about Unity, that I'm available. I'm really easy to talk, like reassure people, because there's this idea in people's heads that the minister isn't somebody that you actually like interact with, because they're up there on some sort of a pedestal or something, and
I'm not qualified to talk to that person yet.
Exactly. Right. And their time is more precious than my time, which is also so not true. So, just letting people know that if they have any questions, and that they can always reach me through the spiritual connection card, they can always touch base with me through email, right? And so the welcome team should definitely have some of my business cards, so that if people want to reach out to me, that you have access to them very easily. On the back of the bulletin is pretty much everything they would need. My email address is there, and the email for the office is there, and hours are there, and all of that kind of detail stuff is on our bulletin. But giving people my business card can make people feel a little bit more comfortable as well, potentially.
That's a great idea.
And then I loved how the welcome table looked in the courtyard. I love that, like, every week we're adding another piece, right? Which I think is great. And we're just going to figure out how it grows and what's organic and what's really working. I think it's great that we have a canopy on a table out in the courtyard. We're getting a banner for the table. I think it's going to say welcome. So that there's more cues for people to be able to identify where they can go for more information about something.
Right.
So again, thank you.
You mentioned
this is big.
You mentioned having the class sign up clipboards.
Yes, and having event information right at that table. So if somebody is new, they don't know how to land in our events. They don't know what's actually happening. I mean, we do announcements, but still they're overwhelmed, right? They're trying to process a tremendous amount of information. So we're working on cleaning up the bulletin board that's outside the alcove, so that the events will actually be there. So you can always direct people to the bulletin board, hopefully starting this Sunday. That's what we're hoping for. And then the idea is to have the sign-up sheets and that sort of thing happening at the welcome table too. So that, if someone, it's like letting people know, hey, we've got a great class that you can take, or we're having a great event coming up, Earth Day. It's a really great event to come, and, sort of helping people like, I just made a couple of calls. I made a call to a couple of people who are new, and they both have kids, and, they're trying to decide, and one of them is, they're all teenagers. And so, that's a whole, and I said, well, we're doing a whole Earth Day celebration, and maybe they would enjoy that. There's going to be electric bikes, and there's going to be, electric car demos, that might be something that they might get into and appreciate. I said, or maybe not, because they're teenagers.
No, I think the Earth Day celebration is a great opportunity for us. Are we going to have like a unity table at the Earth Day celebration?
Talk to Don Davey. We should have one, but talk to Don Davey about that.
Just before you came on, I was talking with Shay about uh, getting to know his friend, which I think you talked to too, Trudy,
Mm-hmm.
and who has a lot of experience. I guess she's been a consultant with churches and so on. And she really emphasized, when people, most people, or a lot of people who show up for the first or second time, it's very likely they're hurting in some way. They're reaching out, they're looking for something that is missing, and it's important for us to recognize that and to be soft and gentle with them.
That's one of the things, like I want us to be ourselves, right? And I want us to also just be aware that, sometimes people are coming in and they have a lot of potential shields in place. And what we don't want to do is be assaulting their shields. Like, let us in, we're wonderful, let us in. Like, we want to make sure that we're giving people the space. And, you'd be amazed at just saying, hi, my name's Deanne. I'm really glad you're here today. As I go around in the sanctuary before service, what a difference that makes. Like, oh, it's literally like, oh, I'm seen. I'm not invisible. I'm sitting here all by myself and it feels really weird and awkward, but somebody said hello to me. And I think the
Right.
more people that say hello to people without, again, no hard sell, right? Just hi, good morning. It's really nice that you're here with us this morning. And I know sometimes there are people who have been coming for a long time and you don't know their names and it's really weird and it's kind of awkward. And I think as a community, we just need to get over that and we need to say, hi, I've been seeing you coming here for 15 years. And
Right.
I gotta tell you, I can't remember what your name is.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to see, like, we need to break down some of that awkwardness and just make it okay.
Right.
Right? Just make it
I
okay.
My particular style that I've landed on is just to introduce my name. Hi, I'm Tom.
Mhm.
I don't know you, and so glad you're here. I don't ask them, although you can, I think as the conversation gets rolling, I don't ask them right away, like, are you new here? I
Yeah,
just say,
no.
I'm Tom, I'm somebody here, and I recognize you.
Because remember, we also have a very unique community. I'll go up to people and I'll say, hi, I'm sorry. If we've met, I apologize. But I'm Reverend Deanne, and they'll say, oh, we actually haven't met, or we met once. And, people are very, very kind about all of that. And,
Right.
but they'll say to me, I'm a member. They're not really a member. I'm a member. I was here, 15 years ago. And, so we want to make sure that we're also being inviting to the people who are coming back. So sort of, saying, so are you new here? It's like, well, no, I came here for 10 years and it might have been 10 years ago, but I'm not new here. I feel a sense of ownership about this place. So we
Right.
want to make sure that we're, all of the studies, and this is for anybody who's up on platform ever, you don't call out new people. Like when people say, well, the new people raise their hand, it's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah,
Because
and we used to do that here. We used to have people stand and we give them a flower.
they have
And
done studies that show
yeah,
that 85% of the people who are asked in some way, shape, or form to declare themselves when they are a first time or a second time guest at kind of anything, but particularly religious organizations, hate it and will not come back.
mhm.
I have
Because
a question.
they feel put on
Request.
the spot,
I have a question and kind of just kind of need some general guidance.
Mhm.
I've noticed that since we're kind of new showing up as a welcome team per se, I kind of want to clarify what the ushers are doing and what we're doing. First we took the bulletins from just keep passing them on, and the ushers, that's what they do. And
Yeah, I
I need
know.
some clarification. I think all of the the team wants to be appropriate, but we don't want to go across territories. What would you speak to that?
I will actually, and we should probably have a meeting with Brandy so that we're all having the same conversation.
I think so, very much.
Yeah, I invited Brandy to this meeting.
How I saw this working is that the welcome team is there specifically to welcome people and orient them to the space, right? The bathrooms are here. Sometimes people need to be walked to the end of the corridor to show them where the ADA bathrooms are, right? That like people sometimes need just a little bit more support. Letting people know we have a bookstore on campus. Like the ushers aren't doing anything like that. The ushers are welcoming people, giving them a bulletin. That's kind of what the ushers are doing, and they're helping people get seated. That usually doesn't even happen until we get later down the line. So I see the welcoming team as really being about greeting and saying hello, and supporting the ushers. So like in Easter, thank you to the welcome team who helped put out extra chairs, right? Because we needed extra chairs, and Debbie sort of tapped people and the welcome team sort of stepped in and helped put down extra chairs along with the ushers. So I see there being some overlap potentially, like on May 18th, we're going to have to, the 19th of May, when we do our big celebration, we're going to have to figure that out. And it could be that the welcome team, we're creating little giveaways for everyone who comes that day. And so it could be that the welcome team is outside with those giveaways, giving them to people as they come in. And then the ushers are still giving people their bulletins and helping people to get settled in the sanctuary. But then, like on Easter, at one point, like there was a woman in a wheelchair who planted herself in the center aisle, right? And her helper took the first seat there. And, I had a conversation with them and got them I pulled his chair out, moved her wheelchair into where that chair would have gone. And then he sat down next to her. So when you see things like that, maybe checking in with Brandy and just saying, I see that there's something going on here. Would you like me to help them out, or
Right.
not being careful not to step on the usher's sphere of influence, but also being willing to just be helpful.
Right. Right.
Do the ushers have an assignment besides picking up the old bulletins after the surgery? After
the surgery.
Too much.
We're
After the
cutting
service.
away those old beliefs. We're just cutting them out, tossing them away.
Thank you. But what are the ushers doing after the service? I don't know. So I
think
don't know how to not step on
I
their
think
feet.
they're straightening up the lobby, and I think they are going through the sanctuary and trying to get the paper up, right?
Okay,
So we're not leaving
Good.
papers around.
And are they doing anything else specifically?
No,
In
I
the
think,
courtyard or
this
nothing?
is,
Okay, I just wanted to
and,
know what they were
and
told.
yeah, and this is where I think the welcome team will be huge, is after service too.
Me too.
Right, that in the courtyard and being at both exits when service starts to let out, when people are walking out those doors, and the welcome team might even need to be at those doors. Like basically what happens reality wise is that I finish the talk, and then maybe people stick around for the song right after the talk. But by the time we get to like giving and receiving, half of the people who were there have left.
Really?
Right? They've already exited. By the time we get to the end of service, we usually have about maybe a third to a half of what we had during service. Right? Actually in the room. I just pay attention. You'll look around, you'll be like, wow, all of a sudden everybody's gone. I always notice it when they ask the prayer chaplains to rise. And I turn around and I'm like, oh, nobody's here anymore. So it might be great to have the welcome team, some people from the welcome team, like once my talk is done and the song is done, just sort of outside, not in the lobby because sound travels, but just right there in that breezeway, being able to just say, thank you for coming. just thank you for coming. We're so glad you're here. Because the ushers are doing the counting and they're getting ready for the tithe and
They
the
are.
offering. So they're not available in any way to be able to support anything like that.
Yeah. I think that particularly the people that are hurting in whatever way, they leave early. They don't
Yes,
don't
they
know
don't
how
want
to
to stick around.
socialize. They hurt, I think that's a real thing to recognize that that's a possibility.
Yeah, and again, really gentle. Just we're so
Yeah.
glad you were here. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Just letting people get a sense of, look, our community is an incredible community, right? People really care about each other. People show up for each other. And so we just want to make sure that somebody new coming in can get the awareness that, oh, I can be part of that field, that I would be
when we
welcomed into that.
Well, Tom has just as a beginning kind of assigned people to the entrance of the courtyard, to the doors that way. Do you see that the team members that are identified welcome team, do you see them getting more assignment after church than before? It seems that the welcome team is really there. The usher team is very much there before.
I think that the best thing the welcome team can be helping with is, again, that orienting people into the space, right?
Yeah.
Before service. And just
Okay.
it's a gentle thing. But again, I do think it's a lot more about after the service, making sure that somebody liked the service, they want to stick around. They don't know a single person. They watch everybody in the community start talking to each other.
Which Shay said that what happened to him. I remember that poignantly, that was one of the things you said. You just sat there and watched people talking.
Well, yeah, I noticed that even now when I introduce new people, and it goes both. It's half. I would say. There's been 2 new people. It was Trudy one week, and then Jack the other week. And I find the fact that when I introduce them, it's very easy for our members to turn back to the conversation without being curious and asking further questions. And so then it basically like the ball just drops to the ground. It didn't happen all the time, but it happened to enough where I could sense the energy,
closing down.
Exactly. So
yeah. And so that is, that is part of the piece, is knowing that if Tom, you're on the welcome team and you're talking with somebody and inviting them to come have a cup of coffee, and you step out and you get a cup of coffee with them afterwards, making sure that you're passing them off to somebody who is going to keep the ball going. Right. Needing to sort of lead them through, right. And say, Rita, love, I want to introduce you to this person. Would you mind showing them where we have our hospitality food and getting them set up with the plate? So nobody has to spend the entire time with the same person, but we need to be thinking consciously about I go outside in the courtyard sometimes and I see the new people just sitting by themselves on the bricks, on the in the
yeah,
and everybody's talking around them and they're just sitting there sort of looking, and I'm like, okay, hello people.
But the thing is, Deanne, I passed it on to the welcome table, and it happened there. That's when I was like, oh man, that's not good.
Yeah, that's
where they just continue talking to another member, and so there was no handoff, and so that was not the best.
The first in-person visit is huge. And when things like those kinds of fumbles kind of happen, that is what people are going to walk away with. Honestly, that is what they're going to walk away with. So whoever is at the welcome table, their focus needs to be on new people. I understand that we love our own community and the people that we know, but our focus needs to be on making sure that the new people, it's like you're hosting. Think of yourself as hosting a party, and you have somebody who doesn't know anybody else show up at the party. Do you just ignore them? Of course not. You keep checking in on them. You keep making sure that they have a drink. You keep making sure that somebody is, you might introduce them to another group of people, right? It's like, that's the energy we want to be creating for people. That courtyard will make us or break us. it will either be the place where after service people are so like, oh wow, that was really lovely, and people were so nice, and I'm going to come back, or they're going to be like, I sat there for a half an hour and drank my coffee and nobody freaking talked to me, so screw these people. So it's, I enjoyed the service, but clearly they're not a particularly open group of people. So
Yeah,
that
I came to Unity
courtyard
on
is
two.
huge.
I came to Unity 2 Sundays, and then after that, I stopped for like a month. And it was because of that. So I totally affirm that. I mean, if it wasn't for my own energy in terms of reaching out and plugging myself in, I wouldn't probably have stayed with Unity.
Well, and the thing that also helped you stay was you took a class, and that helped build relationships. And that's why it's so important that the Welcome Team know what events and classes are happening, so that they can guide people into the different kinds of ways that they can start to feel more connected. Because that is truly where people are going to build connection, is if they take a class, or do a book study together, or something like that. Even if somebody decides they're going to come to campus cleanup, right? Like that's where connection really actually happens.
I have another question. So having said what we've talked about, when the assignments are made ahead of time, some of the Welcome Team said, well, we don't want to sign up for the whole, all the whole day before, after, whatever.
Or the whole month.
The whole month. We can, there'll be different Sundays, but my question is, what areas do you think definitely need a person that knows they're assigned to that area? It seems to me the front door, the side door with you, maybe at the end of the highway, both as you welcome them in from the car parks, and then the table afterwards. That's 5 people. And how does that set with all of you about where those aside? Because if we have 10 people, they don't want to be there every Sunday doing that.
No. And I don't think we need that much.
And
It's overwhelming. It's too many people.
Too many. So how about, what areas do you want Tom to specifically assign people to?
The courtyard after service is
at the table, probably. At
the table, or maybe it's one person at a table and one person circulating. Because like like Shay was saying, like that is where people are going to decide. Like if they've stayed long enough to stay for the courtyard, that means that they're interested. It means that they saw something and felt something during service that makes them want to take the next step to go have coffee, right?
Well, that means that the person at each door would be assigned, and then the courtyard person under the classroom, the sign-up sheets, and then one other. So we'd really have 4 Welcome Team there. That would be our assignment for the week, is hopefully 4 Welcome Team members. And if they can come before, that's great. But the ushers are doing quite a bit. Is that about where you guys see this, where we should assign people and let them know we're depending on you to be at that spot?
I'm also going to leave this in some ways to what is going to work, right? So, I mean, we can come up with these ideas that we want this many people, but if there aren't that many people to show up, so what is actually going to work in terms of prioritizing? Having someone at the front door before service, helping people to orient themselves in space, I think is important. And someone, at least one, if not 2 people in the courtyard afterwards. Like if I had to pick what are the biggest priorities, it would be those 3. And then after that would be saying goodbye to people as they leave, right? Because the ushers are doing the counting and they're kind of done at that point.
There's a vacancy there.
There's a vacancy there. So
I think that's helpful.
Right?
I mean, see where they're assigned, they're going to show up more.
Ideally, I would prioritize. I mean, do you have any thoughts? I mean, you're the ones who are out there sort of doing this. I'm not.
My thought about this assignment business topic I wanted to talk about is that in a perfect world, all of the team members who are there and present on a Sunday are going to be so awake and alert that they're going to identify a spot that needs covering. And if it's uncovered, they'll go cover it. If there's nobody at the welcome table, they'll go to the welcome table and cover it.
Well, only because they know it's a priority.
Yeah, because they know it's
Right.
a priority. And so in my ideal world, everyone is so motivated and attuned that they don't need a specific assignment. If I see you at the, you know, at the front door saying goodbye and nobody's next to you, I'll go up and do that. Or, you know, Shay will see that and go up and do that. So
I think they do need a specific assignment.
do you?
Yeah, they wander around. They don't know what we've identified as priorities. They can, and if there's nothing happening at that place, they can wander around. People ask already, what's my assignment? Last week,
Right.
that was what they were asking. Where am
think
I
it
supposed to be?
helps.
I think that, and then if, you know, we have
Help
the general
shape.
thing going, general shape going, but I do think people need to know this is your area. And until it runs down, that's where we would like for you to be.
Mhm.
I'm not for just people wandering
Yeah.
at all. I
Yeah.
don't think it works. You know, if they know there's 2 people in the courtyard, just generally, 2 people in the courtyard, someone at the back and some of the side doors, and then wherever else you can fill in. I just need to tell you that people don't work that way. If they don't know where they're supposed to be, they don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
They
what
just-
I also want to also make sure that we're setting up is that people who are on the welcome team can have a day where it's about them and it's not about newcomers. And it's, you know, they can have an opportunity to just be at service and be with themselves and, you know, not have to always be on the alert for new people. Because that's
Mhm.
important
And-
too, right?
But by having assignments, they'll know that's their day, their week, and they're on, and then they're not.
Yeah, and obviously, and this is why that piece of like we're all on the welcome team, because you know this is a big lift, and it's not just the welcome team, the specific team members' responsibility to make sure that newcomers feel comfortable and welcomed. And I think our community, who love each other so much, forget that feels it doesn't feel inclusive. It feels like I already have my people and I'm more interested in the people I already have a relationship with than I am in building a different relationship with somebody else, or even inviting that someone else to come into what this relationship is. Right? Because it changes things. And I get that. I really do get that. And I get that our time together is precious and important to us as a community. And we're not going to grow. I mean, the number of people that that mirror Shay's experience that I have heard about afterwards, right?
That's why all the strategy, none of that really matters if ultimately it's just that. It's like going to Walmart and having a Walmart greeter, or going to Disneyland and someone directs you to the restroom. That's not all that. That's why for me, it's culture is more important. And then once the culture is in place, all of these little strategies enhances all of that, you know? And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I see the welcome team because these are people who care enough to be specifically on this team. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That this is the spearhead for helping to shift the culture, right? That this team is part of how we're going to pierce through some of this stuff. Because how many people are on the team now? It's big, right?
Yeah, it's 8 or 10. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a lot of people in consciousness, right? Who are holding that even just, I mean, understanding that you come to service and you want to hang out with your friends, but if you see a new person, that's that curiosity piece, right? Being curious enough to invite them over and ask them about themselves and, you know,
Right.
and invite them into a larger connection, right?
Right.
Because that's why we're all here, is to connect.
Yeah.
So, you know, and some of it is just a consciousness thing. you know, we get caught in some sort of lack, like I'm not going to have enough time with my people if I actually give this person time or whatever.
Right.
It's going to change how my chattiness is because I have this person who I don't know who's part of this. I have my own insecurities about talking to people who I don't know that are getting triggered left, right, and center by having newcomers here. I mean, there's all those pieces happening. And I think, yay, like this is how we all get to grow. This is how we all get to really live more fully into one of our core values, which is connectivity. Our other core value of inclusivity, making space for people and being authentic in it, right? That it's not a sales pitch. It's not about trying to make them come back, right? It's about just being curious about who they are and that they're here. And especially if they stuck around in the courtyard, those are the people that are saying, okay, I'm going to kind of plant my flag in this space. And now what's going to happen? And that's why as a community, we really have to show up for that particular piece.
I think it'd be good for the others to know that the intentionality of the welcome team, especially like board members, the prayer chaplains, like any who's already in positions of leadership who already have such a sense of ownership, those people are already going to have, you know, so I think it'd be good because we can have all the intentionality, but if no one knows what we're actually doing, then it does become where yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And remembering too, like we're starting this, right? So we're figuring things out. We're putting the wheels on it as we go. And you know, and we have a lot going on right now. So like calling a member meeting to discuss how we can actually be more welcoming and inclusive can absolutely be on the list of things we do. But what I would love it to come from is from the welcome team, not from me. I would love it to come from personal experience, like Shay saying, like, I brought new people and what they experienced was this, because people don't believe me. They don't believe me. But if the welcome team is looking for how does the community not pick up the ball? How is the community sort of not being truly open in the courtyard? Then we can call a meeting and the welcome team can just share what they're seeing. Because what I hear from people when I say, you know, we can come across as kind of cliquey, and all I hear from people is, oh, we're just good friends. People just don't understand that we're such good friends.
Yeah.
That's why I think role play actually might not be a bad idea. Like literally, like have come up and then like pretend you don't know the space and have people walk through it so it's embodied a little bit. Even when it comes to the welcome team, I think that would be really, really helpful for people because I think people don't remember. People, it's been so.
I mean,
they
have a
take it for
group of like 4 people who are all talking together, and have somebody
Yes.
bring you over and say, well,
Yes.
this is Alan.
Yes.
And then have
Yes.
everybody go, hi, Alan, and then turn around and just keep talking to each other again.
Yes, and then do it again because literally that's what happens.
Yeah.
So I think people need to have an experiential. That could be really quick, but just let people and then debrief about it. I think that'd be really helpful for people. I see it all the time, and I find myself at times doing it too. So this is where it's in my consciousness.
Well, and I think too, again, this is where I'm saying, like, if we can make the welcome team the spearhead of this consciousness shift, and we can start to have some traction happen, then we can bring the whole community in, and we can apply the same methodology that has helped the welcome team grow in its awareness. We can share that with the whole community, right? So that they too get an experience of what it's like to walk in and not know anybody and have a whole bunch of people's backs to you and nobody's making eye contact with you. In fact, people are purposefully not making eye contact with you because if they make eye contact with you, then they're going to have to talk to you.
I think that I was just saying to Tom, I really hope that he sends this out to everyone on the team.
Oh, yeah.
And makes this a really important thing for them to look at, this conversation. Be a lot of information for them.
I can tell you, like, I can tell you that right now, I'm both. I think Rita, you know the fact that I'm in a social space in San Rafael, and they have multiple locations. I've been to the one in San Francisco. I went to the one in Oakland. I've experienced being the new person and not getting that interaction, right? So I'm already experienced outside of the community, and they're trying to build numbers, and their whole goal is anti, loneliness and pro community connection. And so this is not a unity thing. This is a human nature thing. This is do we see the guest as the guest, or how invisible they are? And on top of that, anyone who's marginalized, who is not a part of mainstream overculture, whatever you want to call that privilege, those people are even more sensitive to invisibility. So when you don't, there's already like a deficit in that space. And so it's really important, kind of like, Deanne, you mentioned that too, or last Sunday, right? In terms of you and Chris's experience. I think it's super important.
I can't tell you the number of places we go where people refuse to make eye contact with Chris, and they'll look at me, but they won't look at her. And so if we were to walk into a situation where people weren't looking at us, we wouldn't think that it was about the people being anxious or insecure. We would think that it's about the people not wanting to interact with an interracial couple. We would, that's where we would go, because people don't want to always interact with an interracial, queer couple, right? Like, and so we would be looking for those signals. How welcome are we here? Do people actually see us, or are we invisible? Or is one of us seen and the other one is invisible? So, this is really important. This is that inclusivity leading edge. And I loved what you said, Shay, and I want to say this to everybody who's watching this. This is not just happening at Unity in Marin. This is not just about our culture. This is about how communities have operated, and it is asking to shift. It has to, because that model has sort of taken us as far as we can go, and it's time for a new model. So if it feels a little daunting and like, whoa, that's because we're creating something. And I would like people to focus on the creation of something, right? And understanding that it's okay. We're going to mess it up. It's going to be messy. It's not always going to work. Like Shay said, like, he's not always talking to new people. He's done it too. I'm sure I've done it as well. So, we have to be compassionate with ourselves. And I believe that if we really do want to grow our in-person connections, we need to shift something fundamentally in how we understand, how we interact with people after service. I think that's really, and I think that should be our priority. That's where we focus all of the attention, because I really do believe if Chris and I would stick around at some of those communities that we were looking at, and nobody would talk to us. And I love the service. The service was awesome. And then afterwards, it was like crickets. And it was like, well,
it's actually the second service. The before and after is the second service.
Yes, I think that's a great way to hold that, Tom. I think that's a great way to hold it. We're not done when we get into the courtyard, right?
Yeah. I've got a couple of crazy ideas I'll just throw out. One is, if we could, the question to myself is, and to you, is there a way we can make these ideas more visible and prominent to the entire community?
Well, what I just said is, let's do it with these 10, and then we'll take it to the bigger community, right?
Yeah,
let's figure it out with this group, and then we absolutely will bring it to the larger community.
Right. I'm wondering, Bill Engelhardt used to orchestrate these silly and crazy skits every now and then. And I'm just wondering, is this material for a 5-minute skit during a service?
No, because that will make new people run even further and harder, because they'll think we're performing. So this is an internal cultural component that we need to deal with it's a like, let's have a member meeting and let's have some exercises planned and let's allow people to have that embodied experience of what it's like to be a newcomer somewhere, and then let the community figure out how can we open it up, how can we create new space. I don't have all the friggin' answers here,
Mhm.
and that is going to then sort of build momentum. But if I'm a new person coming in and I see a skit about how the community doesn't welcome people and we need to do better, that's not going to be a place I'm going to want to stick around for.
Okay, how about number 2 idea? Barbara Cochran, I guess every other Sunday has her therapy group, right? People are invited
The
if they
support
have
circle. Yeah.
support circle. Yeah, therapy group,
Well,
support
it's not
circle.
therapy though. Just to be
No,
really clear. It's
I
not
understand.
therapy.
No.
So it's support circle, right?
Uh,
Legally, we can't, it's not therapy. It's a support circle.
Sure. Sure. Number 1, I don't know how many people are attending that.
8.
Huh?
7 to 8.
7 to 8, Rita says. Okay. And I'm just wondering if that idea could be extended perhaps to the most likely to the courtyard, where we, create a circle of chairs for just a conversation pit. And, welcome tea people who don't have an assignment, they can hang out there and just,
I mean, having some sort of a post-service discussion about what the talk was about, or, I think would be great, right? A spiritual salon sort of thing in the courtyard.
Right.
But we need people to facilitate, because I don't have the bandwidth. I honestly,
Right.
I mean, just
Sure.
100% honest.
Sure.
I wouldn't have the bandwidth to be able to really be present with something like
I think
that.
we've got plenty of people who could facilitate that.
I would love if we had something like that. I have a virtual person who is going to start. We're going to start it in June because it's too busy right now. But once a month, she's going to start a virtual community connection. And after service,
Like the virtual courtyard, right?
she's going to facilitate once a month a conversation for the virtual community to come together to talk about what's been happening in the talks and what's alive for people. And she was a prayer chaplain at another Unity, so she's got like the capacity to do that, and she wants to serve. So we're going to have something like that once a month. We're starting with it once a month for the online community, because we have to build the things before they come in the door. So we have to have these things in place so that people have some place to kind of drop into. So I think it would be awesome if we had enough people who wanted to just facilitate a conversation and a discussion around what the, linking it back to the talk, right? And sort of what was being discussed and all of that kind of thing.
Right.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I've been in churches. One I remember is when I was in the Episcopal Church. We had a fairly sizable group of people come together kind of in a Sunday school class to talk about.
I bet you'd have a lot of people who'd be interested in sitting down for a salon, right? Like, okay, let's talk about, and I can come to some, I just can't commit to being there all the time.
Yeah, no,
or I can drop in for part of it and then, sort of leave. But I mean, I think that's a great idea, right? I mean, to have something like that and that might be perfect for a new person, right? Where they feel like, okay, there's some structure there, but I'm going to get to connect with people. I don't feel quite as lost as I do, just sort of sitting in the courtyard. Like, it gives me a focus point. And, running it like a salon, right? Where people just get to it's casual. It's not, it's not highly structured, but it's structured,
Right.
Linda and James do that after their spiritual film nights, and it's really interesting.
Yeah,
people have very different takes on what they've just seen, and
exactly.
get to know people, and
I think that's a great idea. So I would
it really works that way. Yeah, I think people enjoy going there because they're going to get to talk to other people after the movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they're not all Unity people. I mean, get some guests at that.
And what I love about that, if we can set something like that up, is that it gives no matter when a newcomer comes, it doesn't matter if we have a class starting or not, there's always the spiritual salon for them to be able to drop into to make deeper connections with people. Right. And that's important. It's one of the reasons why evangelical churches, they just run nonstop Bible groups, right? They don't stop. But that's because they're making sure that new people have something to immediately get sort of popped into.
Yeah.
And so if we had something like that at Unity, I think that would be great.
What are your thoughts about that, Shay?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's important that people have authentic conversations. I know that I do that for my workshops. I do that for the book study and so forth. I think it's super important. Yeah,
And
I think
people
because you
love
can,
it.
I think again, it goes back to the whole idea of what Deanna's saying about the whole inclusivity piece. It's like, what does that really look like in terms of the embodiment of that? If there is the first, like having the welcoming, but then how do you actually include them in some sort of authentic conversation, or even just giving opportunity to have that conversation is important.
Right. I mean, even if they just sit there and they don't volunteer anything throughout the entire, spiritual salon, it doesn't matter. They're still in it in a different way than they might have been if they had just gotten up and left after service, right?
Well, I can tell you, like Jack, the one that was in the wheelchair, when I invited him, he literally told me, it was like, will they accept me? Because, he's missing a foot. And he says, how do I get in there? And I told them there's a ramp on the other side. This is prior to even a Sunday.
Right. Of
So
course.
all the ideas in terms of like that whole thing, I love what is that third bullet, I believe, in terms of inclusivity before they come in the door. Like that is a perfect example of literally before they come up the ramp to get to the door, right? And so,
Yep.
Yeah. Where do you think would be a good location for that spiritual salon?
If it starts at noon, we might be able to, because the kids are in the Unity Hall, but we might be able to get Unity Hall cleaned up enough by noon to be able to have something gather there, as long as it's like, an hour or so. I wouldn't do anything longer than that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Otherwise, people won't want to stick around. They'll feel like, oh, I'm going to lose my entire Sunday. It's all going to get sucked into the abyss. So,
I'm gonna be like a Methodist and stay all day.
Right. But gives people enough time to have a little bit of something. I'll make a note at the next staff meeting to talk to Brandon and Reese and try to figure out where we could do a spiritual salon.
I wonder whether I even has to do that.
Go ahead.
I wonder whether it doesn't have to be in quotes that structured that way, but even just having a place. So in my mind, where the canopy is for the projector, like there's already some seats there. If we just make that into a circle and basically you go into that circle, there's the opportunity to have that conversation. I think sometimes it's actually having a container of location rather than a container of time necessarily, because then you're not wearing anybody out, Part of the welcoming group could just be like, there's a person sitting there. Everyone, if you want to debrief, there's the place for it to happen. So like even when it comes to this, even in terms of this location, there are partition areas in ground floor. There are places that people know to work. There are places that you're going to socialize. You go into that space, there's probably going to be someone who's going to talk to you. And so because of these sections off, it really, really helps. Because I think that for a lot of people wanting to stay a quote for another hour, that's tough for people,
I
but
agree.
if they just but a location, like if hypothetically, kind of like our meditation garden where we have those hedges, if that was literally like closer to the fountain, then that would be a perfect space. But that's just the idea of like a circle. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I think certainly we can try this out with the weather is clearing up right now. So doing it outside right now is not going to be a challenge. And let's see what kind of traction we get, and let's see how it takes off. And, it could be that it can happen in the sanctuary unless there's an event. And if there's an event, it could move to the Fillmore room, like if the weather won't allow people to be outside.
Can we get a sign and a little PR on that so people will know what it is?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, we would make it program, but
Right.
what I would need to know is, do we have the facilitators for it, and that sort of thing, because that will also kill us if we don't have clear guidelines for whatever's happening in that circle, which should follow our normal guidelines, confidentiality and speak from the eye, and make space for other people's voices. Like all of that needs to be the container that we're holding that in. And
So
we
go
just
a little
need,
slow on that right now, but start writing some things down and not start next Sunday at the
oh, no,
spiritual
no,
salon. No, it's
yeah,
going to be in the future. Yeah.
guys, don't kill me, please. With this 60th
Okay.
anniversary thing, I'm like up to my eyeballs in
Okay.
things.
Well, we've been going for an hour, and this has been great. This is exactly what I wanted, is to hear more from Deanne, from Shay, Rita, and I wanted to hear from myself. So anyway,
Honestly, I think this could be a really great way to begin to shift culture, is by creating a place of connection. Our community is awesome in classes. They don't turn their backs on people in classes. They don't shut people out when we create that structure, right?
right,
So I think this is a great way to start to create something where in the courtyard we have some place that that kind of open-heartedness and deeper listening is actually happening. So we just need the facilitators for it, though. Like we
Yeah.
need people who can hold that space.
right. Yeah, well, I think that
Which we have an
we've got 3
incredible,
potential facilitators right here,
absolutely.
and and more, just among the Welcome Team group.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we have incredible, I mean, that's the thing about this community. It's, other communities, you can't do something like the community wisdom workshops that we're going to do in the summer, where the community just picks something and teaches it. You can't do that at every community, because not everybody has the kind of facilitation skills that our community sort of has in mass. So that's a
Right.
great thing.
so
It's a
well,
gift.
thank you, Deanne, for joining us and your
course.
leadership.
And again, thank you all. I say it again and again, and I love that this team is taking me up on it. You come to me with the great ideas and the energy behind it, and I will help clear the way to make them happen.
That's
right?
awesome.
So
Shay, would you like to close us out with a prayer?
I can do that. Okay.
Okay.
I invite everyone to close their eyes, relax for a moment. So grateful for our open hearts and for our connection to each other, to ourselves, and to the oneness of it all. And really excited to see how our thoughts are going to manifest in time and space, both now in this near future and also in the weeks and months to come. Just really, really grateful for Unity and Marin and the light, the beacon it is to the greater Nevada and Marin in California and so forth. And so it is.
So it is. Thank you all.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody. Love you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love
Okay.
you.
Take care, everyone. Self-care.
Self-care.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. That was great.
We're down for 25 minutes.